Hey, y'all. So I don't know about your little corner of the world, but I know that here in Woodstock, Georgia, which is about 30 miles north of Atlanta, our little world changed drastically almost overnight with the COVID-19 quarantines and closures. So it's pretty crazy here. All three of my kids are home from school. My husband's about to be home from working. He's actually finishing up his very last job for the foreseeable future, and it's a little scary. Granted, we have a fully funded emergency fund, but that's only for 6 months. And there are some financial gurus that are talking about that this is going to last for 18 months. And that's a little nerve wracking, I'm not going to lie. And so we here in the Fearon household have kind of gone on like emergency lockdown because even though we do have the peace and reassurance of having our emergency fund in place, the reality is that that number is finite, and we depend on my husband's income for our family. And well, come Tuesday of this week, which this video will appear on Wednesday. So the day that you watch, this will be the first day where my husband is not working. He is self-employed, so he owns his own business and he's in construction. He remodels homes. And unfortunately, construction always, just historically, has always been an industry that's always hit very, very hard. Same with a lot of blue collar industries when the economy changes and shifts. And so even though we are living in some very uncertain times, very unprecedented, and not going to lie, very nerve-wracking. Even someone who, like myself, who doesn't have a mortgage anymore, our home is paid for, we have no debts. It's still very scary, even though we do have a savings account built up for this intended purpose. It's still a very nerve-wracking time. So if you are nervous and frightened, I really truly want you to know that you are so not alone. But I also know that during this time, you are probably wanting to do whatever you can to make sure that your family is taken care of financially. So I thought I would kind of share with you some things that I know have always been helpful for my family in the past, especially when we were trying to become debt-free. There were some things that we did that were really, really helpful in getting us debt-free and helping us learn how to manage our money better. And so I'm going to share those with you guys because I do still think that they will help us that are dealing with these closures, these job closures, and these quarantines, and our kids all being home. Mine are currently in the backyard playing because it's been raining here in Georgia and Bob needed a break. So the first thing that you can do in order to make sure that you are saving every penny that you possibly can is to do a spending review. Sorry about that. So the first thing that you can do is to do a spending review. This doesn't have to be super, super difficult. So this does not need to be super complicated or anything like that. All you need to do, hi baby. Now, doing a spending review does not have to be hard or challenging. My best advice to you is to pull the last 3 months of your bank statements. So wherever you spend money at, your checking account, your credit cards, pull the last 3 months worth of bank statements and go through them with a fine-tooth comb. Get a couple of different color highlighters, get some different color pencils, markers, whatever you've got on hand to use those in order to categorize out your expenses. What you're going to want to do is to highlight all the grocery expenses one color, all the fuel, transportation related expenses another color, and so on and so forth. And then at the end of highlighting all these transactions, you are going to want to then tally everything up and divide by the number 3, because that is going to tell you how much on average over the span of 3 months, so in a quarter, that you spend on those various categories. Now, the first time that me and my husband did this, it was extremely eye-opening because we realized we were spending thousands of dollars at the grocery store. And at the time, only 3 of us were eating food. We are now a family of 5 and spend significantly less than that. So once you're armed with that information of how much it is that you are spending in those various categories, you can then make the decision on what expenses you can reduce and which ones you can eliminate. So expenses, of course, like your groceries, that's usually one that we have control over in the sense that we can reduce. Now, I know if you are living in an area like myself that has been impacted by the shortages, this gets a little challenging. But I still encourage you to do the best that you can and work with what you have, and to just be mindful of what it is that you are spending your money on. That's really all that this exercise is about, is just making us aware of where our money is going, and how best to utilize our money. Of course, if it's an expense that you can eliminate, I would highly recommend that you eliminate it, especially if it is not for your absolute survival, at least for the time being. I know for my family, we have already had to completely cut out the Easter budget. So there's not going to be any Easter baskets this year in the Fearon household. So I know my kids are going to be kind of sad about that. But the reality is that we truly have to make our money last. And maybe some people will think that that makes us bad parents, but I would rather have food on the table than my kids have cute little Easter baskets. So that's what this is really all about, though, is making those kind of tough decisions. But once you're armed with the information, making those decisions is a whole lot easier than just trying to sort of guesstimate, well, how much do we spend at the grocery store? Do we know how much we spend at our grocery store? Because now you're going to know. And so once you're armed with that information, you can make better and more informed decisions. The other thing I would encourage you to do is decide which expenses are priority expenses. Again, since we don't know really what the future holds, we don't know. Here in Georgia, we are supposed to be done with this quarantine period next week, next Wednesday, I believe. But we may not be. I know that folks in California and Washington, their quarantine has lasted a lot longer than 2 weeks. So I'm not really sure what the future holds. We could be on this quarantine for up to 8 weeks or possibly longer. And so even if you're not quite dealing with these quarantines and these closures yet, the reality is that if it comes to your door, you may find yourself without being able to go to work, and your children not being able to go to school for 2 or more weeks. And so because of that, we are, like I said before, trying to stretch all of our money and make it last as long as possible, because we don't know what the future holds. So that's why it's important that we identify what expenses are priorities and which ones are not. Because even though right now you may not be feeling quite the effects of the COVID-19 quarantines and closures, it might not have reached your area yet. By identifying those priorities, the expenses that you deem to be the absolute most important, I mean, obviously paying your mortgage or your rent and your utilities and food are going to be priority expenses. But if there are any other expenses that are priorities in your budget, those need to be like labeled as these are important, these are non-negotiable. We won't give these up unless if we absolutely have to. So those, and then that makes the decision making for the other expenses that are not priority. It makes it easier to cut those out of your budget whenever you find yourself in need of slashing the budget even more. And for those that are affected by COVID-19 closures and quarantines, and especially if you are feeling the loss of a job or the loss of the income, the best thing that you need to do right now is to first call all of your providers, your mortgage holder, your landlord, your creditors, your utility companies, and let them know that you are affected by the COVID-19 closures. Many of the utility companies, as well as mortgage holders, they already have plans in place to deal with this. So they are prepared to deal with you calling them and telling them that you are essentially not going to be able to afford to pay them for a few months, or at least a few weeks. They are prepared for that. Many of the utility companies have already said that they are not going to shut off power or water or your natural gas for non-payment, at least not as of right now. So you need to call them, let them know, give them that heads up, as well as obviously file for unemployment and any other benefits that you can apply for. But just keep in mind that as this affects more and more people, it is going to sort of bog down the system and slow things down. So you may not get approved as quickly as you would under normal circumstances. So just keep that in mind, so you are prepared for possibly having to wait a little bit before you find out if your application was approved or not. And if you are a small business owner like my husband, and you are finding yourself affected by the COVID-19, one of the things that I would highly encourage you to do is to talk to your employees about it. Let them know what the plan is. Don't just sort of drop the axe down and, one minute they have a job, the next they don't. We're all kind of aware at this point that the world looks quite different today than it did yesterday. So just let them know, give them the heads up, give them the time to do something different. If you have additional capital in your business, where maybe you can hopefully at least, maybe finish paying them out for the week. If you're having to let them go at like on a Monday or Tuesday, or something like that. And for those that are on the debt-free journey, obviously I'm a huge fan and advocate of living debt-free. My family's been 100% debt-free. We enjoy the benefits of that so very much. And even right now we're reaping sort of that reward because we don't have to worry about making a mortgage payment because our home is paid for. So we don't have to worry about making a mortgage payment. So our money, our emergency fund can last us a little while longer because of us not having a mortgage or any other debt payments that we have to worry about. But I want to encourage you that if you are on the debt-free journey, and I applaud you for making the progress and being on this journey, but I want to encourage you to pause paying off debt for now and to just focus on building up as much money as you absolutely can in your savings account. Because like I said, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know how long this will or will not last. And I think that, and the reality is that having money in our savings accounts is going to benefit us a whole lot more than not having any debt. Because like I said before, many of the creditors and utility companies, they are prepared for you to call them and say, hey, we're affected by COVID-19. We can't afford to pay you right now. Many of them are waiving fees, interest, all of that, because they get it. And, everyone right now is sort of trying to work together to keep the economy stable and from completely collapsing. So definitely give them a call, give them the heads up. And don't feel bad if you do end up experiencing a job loss and you don't have a fully funded emergency fund yet. Don't feel bad for calling the companies and saying that you can't afford to pay them right now because you just lost your job. Don't feel bad about that because you do need to make that money you have sitting in your savings account last you for as long as possible because we don't know how long this will last. So the best things that you can do right now are to do that spending review so you know exactly where your money has been going, how to remedy any issues, so you don't derail any progress that you make. And the other thing that I would want to encourage you is to not go board shopping on Amazon. It's very tempting now that we're stuck at home to get on our computers and to buy all the things. But unless if you just have an endless supply of money coming your way, I would hold off on just going and buying random stuff on Amazon because you're bored. I would hold on to your money, which is another reason why doing the spending review is so impactful because it does open your eyes to how much money that you are spending every single month. A lot of times folks will say, I can't save anything. I have no money to save. And then they do a spending review and discover that they have spent hundreds of dollars on miscellaneous stuff that they can't even remember because every dollar spent does in fact add up. And if you have never created a budget before, I have a full tutorial on how to create a budget. It is linked in the description of this video. I also have a coupon code for my budget planner. It's a digital download, so you can print it at home and you can start creating your own budget binder at home in order to track all of your spending and your budget from home. And if you are being affected by COVID-19, please know that myself, as well as many members of my community, are praying every single day for everyone being impacted by COVID-19 and praying, of course, for our healthcare providers, our first responders, and even for our politicians, because everyone has really tough and hard decisions to make right now. And so we are holding everyone in our prayers every single day because this is not easy, but we will all get through it.